All right, we are live. Hello. Hopefully this live stream is working. Wanted to talk all about the FP300. I didn't really promote this live stream a lot, and I scheduled it first thing this morning, so we'll see how it goes. It's also 15 minutes earlier than usual. I'm adjusting the time, and that's why I really should have said something. I'm adjusting the time back to 8 p.m. for my Thursday night streams. So instead of starting at 8:15, I'm going to start at 8 p.m. It's just going to work better with my schedule, and I think just that starting at 8:15, it just gets to be a pretty late stream. And also, speaking of not so late streams, I am going to go back to certain weeks doing a Friday stream. I think I've figured out the logistics of where I can do that now, changing co-working spaces. So we'll have a place that's closer to where I need to be for my son's cello afterwards. And we'll be able to pull off the Thursday live streams again, Friday afternoon live streams, which means I know there's some folks who can't tune into these live streams on Thursday night just because of time zones, where it'll actually fit for doing some more Friday afternoon live streams as well. So we'll see. I need to figure out exactly which times we'll do Friday, but stay tuned to the calendar over on my website. This calendar. Now, I'm actually launching a new website probably tomorrow. So this page will look different, but it will still be ericw.org/live. We'll give you all this info. So stay tuned for that. And I have my reasons for doing a new website, which you will see after it launches. But of course, the FP300 was the big news this week. Everybody was excited about that. I've been looking forward to the FP300 all year since I saw it at CES. It's definitely one of my highlight products that I saw at CES, and it was really great to see it come out. But, of course, everybody's also had their eyes on Apple. What is Apple going to do? A number of long-awaited products and announcements, and I was refreshing the Apple newsroom all week this week dying to see what they actually announced. And big news, everybody. SpongeBob Patty Pursuit 2 is coming to Apple Arcade's biggest hits on December 4th. So no one cares about a HomePod Mini because Apple didn't announce that. But clearly, big time. So I felt like that was just kind of ironic. I sent that in a text to some of your fellow smart home creators because I was just like, what is going on here? Why don't we have a new HomePod Mini? But maybe we'll get into that a little bit more along with some other smart home and Apple news. And also want to get to your questions about the FP300. Good to see some regulars here in the chat. Good afternoon from Texas. Thank you. Yes. I'm glad you learned a lot from that, John. Hey, Bayaruhaf, I think that's how you say your name. I'm just taking a guess, but nice to have you here. Hello from New York City. Thank you, Supernova. Great to have you here. Good evening from the South, Saul. Yes, enjoying sitting outside. Yeah, not something I would do tonight here in Illinois. It's not as cold as it was last week, but yeah. Oh, nice. FP300 coming tomorrow for Saul. Good evening, my HomeKit friends. Juan. Yes. Oh, and I still need to fix this username thing. Okay, I need to look more into that, but Brian, nice to see you here. Thanks for tuning in. Got the new earlier time. It's requires some time before it's a good product. Too soon, too early leaves. You know, I didn't experience any software issues with the FP300. However, millimeter wave sensors, I think, are something that's hard to pull off. And I would be surprised if a car doesn't have firmware updates down the road to fix whatever software issues come from the launch. So, yeah, stay tuned to their app, and I'm sure they'll have some updates. But I'm bummed for you, Supernova, that you're having issues with the FP300. But in some ways, you're right. It's new hardware, new technology. It's going to have some problems along the way. That was definitely the case, certainly for the FP2, and in certain ways for the FP1E. I've just kept my FP1E in the laundry room, and it's gotten better and better over time with its sensing of people in the room. I think in part that's Aqara's firmware updates. I think that's in part that automation's running in Apple Home. I think Apple Home's done some things to speed up some of those automations as well. So, yeah, but it's a good point. Hello from Atlanta. And hello, Edgar's Home Tech. Yes, a guest on the live stream. It is a busy month for us smart home creators. I'm sure Edgar's working on a lot of videos. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming this time of year. Even if it's not always new products, just it's a great time to talk about videos. A lot of people looking to get accessories, get some deals. We got Black Friday just around the corner. Question, will the Aqara FP300 work with my Aqara 2 hub? I'm guessing that's the M2 hub. I did not check that. Theoretically, I think it will, but let's go ahead and check that page on Aqara's website. Oh, here it is. Okay, learn more. Pull this up. So they have a picture here of what looks like an M2 hub. So that's a good sign, although it could be their new, the hub they announced at IFA, which is the M200. It could be that. Product support. Okay. I'll have to check on that because I'm not sure. Now I know I'm pretty sure you should be able to get it working with the M2 hub because that's a Zigbee hub. It's also one of Aqara's more recent hubs. You of course couldn't run it with Thread with that hub, but I think that should work. But yeah, I'll update you guys if I hear something about the M2 compatibility on the FP300. It's a good question. Happy Friday from Robert in Australia. And I love your username. In some ways, it's fun to keep the usernames on because you get to see some ones that I wouldn't have expected. It's great. My FP300 came today. That's great, John. Literally setting it up now. Nice. Enjoy. Oh, nice. Edgar's back from a 9-day vacation. That sounds great. Yes, catching up with the new tech. Hello from Hoboken. Oh, also an Edgar. That's great. Good name. FP300 coming tomorrow. Nice. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting sensor. Now, I don't want to make it feel like, oh, this is just the FP300 club where if you're not getting one, you're not cool, right? Like, there's a lot of other great smart home tech out there, and you don't need to buy all the things. I need to tell myself that a lot. Part of the benefit of course, my job is that I get sent some of this stuff, so that's always nice. But yeah, it's a cool cool hub, but I also don't want this to feel like a home shopping network thing about the FP300. But yes, if you have questions about Apple's smart home tech, the FP300 as well, for sure. Any FP300 questions, other stuff, put them in the chat. If you can prefix your question with the word question, that helps just me see the questions as they come through in the chat. But we have some other news to talk about in the meantime. Of course, you've probably heard me talk all about the iPhone Air. So there have been a lot of mixed rumors on what's happening with the iPhone Air. But there is some rumors that it might have 2 cameras up here in the top. I don't know how they could fit 2 cameras in there, but I'm sure they could figure out something cool there. I would love to see that. So you get, I'm hoping, a telephoto lens, just because Apple before now, if you use a modern Pro iPhone for past few generations, there's a periscoping mechanism for the zoom camera, and that enables something like 5x, or now it's 4x, which can go to 8x. That whole zooming mechanism. But before that, they used to have a 3x lens that was not a periscoping lens, and I would love to see that come back. Particularly, I think if they do a 48 megapixel sensor, kind of like they've been doing on the Pro and on the 1x camera on the Air, then you could get 3x and 6x depending on how you're zooming. So I don't know, just some things to think about there. But I wouldn't count the Air out. I think it's a really cool phone. It's a great phone for me, and it's not for everybody, but I think there's a lot of people out there who end up getting the Pro who probably could have gotten the Air and really enjoyed it. But because what do you do the most with your phone? It's probably hold it in your hand, and that's just better with the Air. Or put it in your pocket or your bag, which is another part where the weight matters. Now, speaking of more smart home stuff, I talked about this in my newsletter on Sunday. IKEA has a whole new line of smart home products. We didn't have I'm trying to remember. We didn't have a live stream last week, so we didn't get to talk about this. But I think it's exciting to see IKEA launch. And then again, this is not shipping to stores until January, but it's exciting to see IKEA, which is such a big global company, shipping a huge collection of Matter over Thread devices. They have, the CO2 sensor, they have contact sensors, they have buttons, smart plugs, bulbs, all kinds of stuff. So, I think it's really going to, we see Philips Hue have Thread in some of their new stuff recently, like, with IKEA adding Thread, it's going to make Thread more common. And I think as well, the other key thing as you think about Thread, I think it's version 1.4, which adds the network interoperability. As that rolls out to all these different Thread border routers and things, I think that's really going to help people be more likely to have a Thread border router and other devices, other nodes in their Thread network that can take advantage of it. So that's just going to make people's Thread networks more reliable. Of course, these days, you often run into situations where you'll hear, or I'll hear about Thread being unreliable for someone, and it's often in part because they just don't have very good Thread signal wherever that is. Now, Thread's a good long-range protocol, but if your mesh network only has a few border routers and it's kind of a weak collection of nodes, then Thread can struggle. I mean, that plays into the FP300 as well. But I put my FP300 on Zigbee. I think if you have the choice, that's what I would go with. But again, you always have Thread, I think, is another good option. I'm glad that Aqara is putting Thread in their sensors. It lets you pair it directly with ecosystems like Apple Home. But yeah. Speaking of iPhones really quick, last iPhone smart home related story, it also kind of ties into another thing I was talking about earlier, CES. So Belkin has recalled a number of products. So this article from 9 to 5 Mac links a recall form you can fill out to understand, like, if your Well, I guess it's these model numbers. And I actually have this Belkin Stand Pro, Auto Tracking Stand Pro. They announced this at CES 2 years ago, and it was it was the first product to integrate with Apple Dock Kit. Now, if you're not familiar with Apple Dock Kit, that is a standard where you can tap your iPhone to the device, and then the iPhone starts wirelessly communicating with that device to then tell it where to turn so that it can track you and just people in the frame. And I think it can do up to a few people now in a group with Dock Kit. And I got one of these just to play with Dock Kit. The idea I had at the time, which never ended up making it into a video, but is what if you could pair an iPhone with an Apple TV, put this on there, and then all of a sudden, your living room Apple TV has a really cool webcam that can turn to see different people. If you've been in fancy corporate conference rooms, sometimes they'll have cameras like that are motorized and can sort of turn to the person speaking and zoom in on them, so that if you have a big conference room of people and then some people remote, right, that you can still see that person all the way down at the end of the conference table because the camera does some various zooming and panning to make it fit. And you could see a world where, everybody could have that with their Apple TV in their living room for talking with their relatives somewhere else in the world on the big screen. And at the time, that sort of worked, but it wasn't really as practical. Now it's actually something, if you have an iPhone sitting around, maybe you've upgraded, you have an iPhone that's a couple generations old, of course, you could trade that in or pass it down to someone else. So there's a lot of other uses for it. But one other kind of smart home use for it would be you can actually now persistent pair an iPhone with an Apple TV. And that can be something where, then you have this iPhone that's kind of sitting there by your TV as your webcam, and you can put it on something, not like the Belkin Stand Pro, because that's recalled for fire risk, but something similar. Like their Insta360 has some gimbals that do this, but unfortunately, the gimbal, well, it does have a tripod stand, is not quite the same kind of size. It's gonna not be quite as nice and compact, but still a similar idea. But could be a cool effect, right? Where you get this panning and not zooming, but panning around the room to fit people in frame. But I think Dock Kit is one of those things that I don't know how far it's going to go for Apple. I think there were some cool smart home uses. Maybe it's something that plays into Apple's new smart home display, not the one that's rumored for next year, but the one that's sort of long-term rumored, this like robot one that can see you when you come in the room and follow you. I'm sure there's some overlap in the technology there. But yeah, it's just something to call out. I just thought it was interesting that like this initial product that I was really excited about, even from a smart home perspective, is now being recalled by Belkin. So also always something to keep in mind is like all these lithium ion batteries we have, they are a fire risk to a certain extent. I don't know if I had this up on the screen while I was talking about it, but this is the page I was talking about with this article from 9 to 5 Mac. So, all right. Let's go say hi to some folks in the chat. We got some good questions here. That's interesting. So Al has a good idea here of using the infrared sensor in the FP300 separate from the millimeter wave sensor. So it sounds like, Al, you're triggering the lights to turn on with the PIR or infrared sensor on the FP300, and then using the presence or millimeter wave, I'm guessing, to turn the lights off when no one's in the room, which could be an interesting combination if you're seeing, I will say, as much as I am just so happy that the thing works really well, like the FP300 has been working well, like it is a little bit on the slow side for me going into a room. And that's true with any millimeter wave sensor. So the idea of using the PIR sensor built in to detect people faster, and I wouldn't be surprised if a car is doing something like that under the hood with the sensor as well. But yeah, it could be a cool manual trick to play with if you're wanting to try to get your automations faster. I find just the basic millimeter wave detection to be completely adequate and fast, plenty fast enough. But yeah, you can certainly eke out a little bit more performance by doing something like that. That sounds like a cool idea. Oh yeah. So I guess I talked about this previously, but just to update John and other folks, my daily carry phone is the iPhone Air. So this is the iPhone Air. I don't have a case on it. Sometimes I wonder if I should have like a case for it in certain cases, in certain scenarios. Maybe I will get a case in the future, but it's working out for me so far. You recommend using Zigbee on the FP300. If so, should I share the Matter light bulb in my Apple Home with my Aqara M3 hub? Well, this is a good question, Sean. And, it's something that I kind of touched on in my video, but we'll go more in depth in this right now, which is, so there's a few different things to consider here. Now, if you're using one of Aqara's newer bridges, so it depends on the Aqara bridge you're using. If you're using a bridge from Aqara that does not support Matter, then that kind of makes the decision for you, right? Because then you can just use the FP300 through that and then tie it into Apple Home. If you're using let's say the M3 hub like I'm using right now, you can tie that into Apple Home with the Apple Home code, but then there's also the Matter code or option for that as well. So it's a Matter bridge. Now, one of the challenges that I've found with Matter bridges sometimes in Apple Home is that various scenarios can make them forget make Apple Home forget what rooms accessories are in, because it somehow sort of like recreates the accessory as what appears to Apple Home as a new accessory. And I'm not sure if this is a Matter issue or an Apple Home issue, but you do like a major change of your Matter controller in Apple Home, and then all of a sudden, a number of your Matter bridges just forget rooms. And so that is a problem that I hit with the FP300. I talked about that in my video and scenarios for that. So that can be a reason that you might want to use Aqara's system to do the automation. It could also be a reason to use another system, let's say Homey or Home Assistant. But I think, if you have that Aqara M3 hub, let's say, like Sean does, then I would consider, if you have a Matter Lite doing what's called multi-admin or setting up pairing mode in Apple Home and then adding it over in the Aqara app. Now, this took me a number of tries to get it to work the first time when I was adding the smart plug in that video. But once I got it, it's worked really well since then. So it's something to consider. And Aqara put a lot of horsepower in the M3 with the intention that it can be running a lot of home automation. So I have really enjoyed playing with Homey recently. I've been going to talk more about that. They had some news just today announcing some bit more interesting Matter support. So, but Homey is a really cool automation hub. But the thing is, if you have an Aqara hub, like one of their M3 hub, it has kind of that same horsepower, more or less. And so there's an argument to be had of like, why not just put all your stuff in the Aqara hub? And I should go to that product page. Smart hubs. Yeah, so if you have something like the M3 hub, it gives you a lot of that power, but then to run those automations just within the Aqara system. Now, there can be reasons why you'd still want to use Homey over Aqara. I still find myself using both, but practically speaking, money's not unlimited, so I could see the argument to just go with Aqara for that. But this is a very long-winded answer. The reason you would want to say, yes, I want to multi-admin my light into the M3 hub, I think the real advantage would be this whole time delay sensor that Aqara has inside of their automations. So you can, in the Aqara M3 hub, say, if no presence is detected, or I think they call it absence in the English translation in their app. But if absence is detected for, let's say, 10 minutes, then you can turn off the lights. Now, you can set an auto delay timer in the FP300, as I mentioned in the video, up to 5 minutes right now without doing any automations in Aqara, right? So you're just setting this in the Aqara app and then using, let's say, Apple Home or another smart home system to do the automation. Then that can, then that will not get the absence state published to it until 5 minutes after the sensor has detected it, right? So people leave the room, the sensor detects it, 5 minutes, then a timer starts for 5 minutes. After that 5 minutes, then that event of people leaving the room, if they're still not there, gets published to other smart home platforms. So that's another way you could do this without having to multi-admin your lights into Aqara. You might not have Matter lights, but yeah, that's my thought. So I would say yes, if you are listening to that and thinking, oh, that doesn't sound too complicated. I understand what Eric's talking about, and seeing the benefit of running those in the Aqara system. And I mean, I mentioned the Aqara system is for, maybe I alluded to Homey, but really what I was getting at there is or talked about Homey, but really what I was getting there is just the M3 hub could then handle more complex automations in certain cases than Apple Home can. For example, those time delay automations that you can set with absence detected by the sensor. So yeah, hopefully that long-winded, disjointed answer made some kind of sense to some people here. But yeah, a lot of layers to consider there as you look at your smart home. And there's actually like a preview of a video that I will be publishing soon that is about another product that supports Matter. And I got this product from the company. They sent it to me ahead of the release date, and I was really excited about it when I first saw the product at CES. But then when I got it, I'm just like, what do I do with this thing? There's so many choices, so many different ways I could use this particular product that I'm just like, I don't know. And this is not the FP300. This is a future video on the channel. But yeah, stay tuned for that. So. William, nice to see you. Thanks for joining. No. Oh, air blend easily in your pocket. So the bending, no, it's not a, it's a very strong frame. A lot of the bend tests have shown that the iPhone Air does not bend. And I do think it blends in better in my pocket just by nature of being a thinner phone, right? So, and I think it's especially noticeable when you have dress pants on. Now, I'm not someone who dresses up all that often, but there's been twice where I've had to wear dress pants since I got the iPhone Air, and both times it's been like, oh, so much nicer than having a big old Pro Max phone in my pocket for those times. Of course, I could live with a Pro Max phone in my pocket those times. For me, that's not a reason to get an iPhone Air. But if I was someone who wore a suit every day to work, or even a few times a week to work, I might really look at the iPhone Air for that, because slipping it into like a suit jacket pocket or a pants pocket, or I imagine women's fashion would be similar. They're different pockets or pants or clothes that just would work better holding a thin phone. There are trade-offs. The iPhone Air is not perfect. You get the one camera, which I think is perfectly serviceable, but you do lose some of the zoom. I was driving home from work tonight and my battery for my iPhone Air was at 28%. Now, this was a particularly heavy usage day for my iPhone, so that's a little bit lower than it usually is, but I plugged it in for a few minutes. The battery's so small, it charged right back up, no problem. And now, I'm sitting here at 70%. So anyways, good question, Sam. I did not test the FP300 with Home Assistant. I would recommend checking out. I haven't had a chance to watch his video. I saw Jimmy Hawkins made a video on it, former guest of my live stream. He made a video. I wouldn't be surprised if his talks about Home Assistant. I'd love to hear what Smart Home Solver thinks as well about the FP300. I haven't seen if he has a video out, but those would be two Home Assistant reviewers. But yeah, I don't have anything to add on the Home Assistant front with the FP300. I saw a couple other questions up. So Brian has a good question on the IKEA 2-button. So one of the products IKEA was showcasing is a 2-button button, right? I think it's this one here. Let me pull this up on the screen. This green one right here. And how does that differ from the Flick Duo, right? So I'm not sure exactly all the details of what's programmable or not with this IKEA one. I wouldn't be surprised if at least out of the box, all it can do is on off, right? From the top and bottom. Would seem like a very IKEA, or just like simple thing to do for an easy user experience, right? But the Flick Duo can do a lot more than that. So I think, in short, the big difference would just be the different ways you can control the Flick Duo with the different gestures and taps of the button. Also, the smart home systems you can integrate it with. Now, of course, Matter over Thread gives you a lot more of those options, not necessarily out of the box, but there is a really cool feature of the Flick Duo, which I will talk about in my video on the Flick Duo, which is where you can actually have multiple different smart home commands under one button press. So you can chain together, I want Apple Home to do this, and I want my Sonos to do this, and I want this other thing to do this, and all that can happen under one button press, which almost seems like a bug that they shipped or something, but it's like, it's great. I think really makes the Flick a powerful button. So something to get excited about with the Flick Duo, and that's true with Flick's latest software with their other buttons as well. But something I get into more in that upcoming video. So stay tuned for my channel for that. All right, I saw another question earlier. Did I miss it? All right, no, maybe not. All right, so we do have some other news to get to. So, of course, we talked about the top of the stream. The HomePod Mini is nowhere to be seen. The new HomePod Mini that's been rumored for a while. I was really thinking this would be the week, given that it hadn't happened before, like that, okay, if they're going to do it, this is the week. Now, Apple, if you haven't been to Apple's website, you might not have noticed that they have this whole new sort of their holiday gifts setup is all there on their website. So it seems very unlikely at this point, given that they have everything ready for the holidays, that they would also have an additional product. But I have a theory. I have two theories I wanted to posit tonight about the HomePod Mini, and then just about Apple rumors in general that I just came to mind this week. And I thought about sharing them on like social media, like Threads, but they're kind of too nuanced, and I thought I'll talk about them with you guys on the stream and kind of understand them. So the HomePod Mini, maybe why did Apple not announce the HomePod Mini? There's one possible idea. If assuming like that these rumors are true and that there is one that's like been in production and is basically ready to go, I bet from a services perspective, Apple Music, the connection with Apple TV in terms of like you use it for audio, different other things, getting people more into the Apple ecosystem. I think for those reasons, Apple likes the fact that the HomePod Mini costs $99. And $99 is a nice mental price because it's, it's just under $100, right? And Apple likes to announce products and kind of have them stay at that price. If you noticed with a lot of the things going on in our politics and economy this year in the US in particular, that Apple's prices didn't really change. And, there can be many different factors that went into that, right? But I think at the core of it, and obviously Apple did a lot of things to move production different places and try and work the system in ways that advantage them, as I think any company their size probably would. That said, they did all that in part, I think, to keep their products the same price. And I wouldn't be surprised if, given the current economic climate and everything, that Apple was considering or planning to announce this new HomePod Mini at a slightly higher price, let's say like $129 or $119 even. I think $129 is a nice price point. I've seen other things from Apple at that price point. And maybe with recent changes in the supply chain or political climate or whatever, that Apple's decided maybe they could hit a $99 price point, but for whatever reason, they want to wait to commit to that until next year. Let these things kind of stabilize in kind of the latest changes in the trade situation and see what happens. And that if they have enough units of the original HomePod Mini to continue selling them, they can do that at $99 and then next year decide, are we going to commit to selling this new one at $99 or raise the price to $129 or whatever makes sense for them. Maybe $149, right? And so I think that's kind of a thing that I would guess Apple has been debating about, but I have no idea. Zero inside information. That's just like a slightly educated guess from someone who's very excited about this thing and has thought way too much about it. The other theory that I had and I'd love to hear your counter theories, ideas, thoughts on that in the chat. You can feel free to leave comments there on Apple's strategy, not about the world political scenarios. We're not here to talk about that at all. That's not what this channel is about. With the rumors, right? There's been some various things with some lawsuits with a particular person who covers Apple rumors and things, and it got me thinking, like, why do people share these rumors? And there can be many different reasons. Sometimes people just have an axe to grind. Sometimes they like feeling cool and divulging secrets. But I would guess, how is particularly Mark Gurman been able to be so pervasive for so many years in reporting this stuff? And I was thinking, this would, just to clarify, if I was to ever work at Apple, I would never do this kind of a thing, but I can see the logic that would lead someone to do this, which is where if you're a manager of some team, your job in part is to get approval from various executives for your team's projects, for their next milestones. And it's also to get the attention and resources of another cross-functional like team in another part of the company that you need to work with for something, right? If you're making a new product, you need the packaging team to make packaging for you and find time in their schedule for them to make your packaging for your product. I'm just making stuff up there, but you get what I'm saying of like these different groups in the company need to work together. They need to have meetings. One of the very publicly known things about Apple's culture is that they're a need-to-know company. And so you have to be disclosed on certain projects inside of the company to be able to talk about them. And so there's even an app apparently where you can check to see, oh, is so-and-so disclosed on this project so that I can talk to them about it or not? And with that, I'm sure there's a lot of things that a lot of question marks managers have about what is this executive's challenges? What are they facing? What are they looking for? What could I do to spin my project so that I get approval from that particular executive? And I could see how some people who are more Machiavellian, I guess you could say, in their approach to that might go to someone like a Mark Gurman who knows a lot about the company and be like, hey, here's what's going on in my team. Give me advice for before I brief this person, the executive, about my thing. And so then Mark gets all this intelligence about that particular team, what they're working on, and then multiply that across a bunch of different managers all over the company who have those same kind of goals of like, just advancing their own team stuff. But I don't know. I could see how that kind of a scenario would play out where this one person gets this sort of omniscient view of everything inside of Apple. But I don't know. Just it's a funny world that we live in with all of that and how it works. But kind of a random aside there, but it just an idea I had this week where I was like, I can't really. There's no way I could put this into like one or two thread posts without getting like a lot of people misinterpreting what I'm saying. But those are my theories. So. Oh, that's a good point, Sean. Amazon's that announced the Echo Dot Max a little bit ago, but it's maybe they just started shipping this week, so I guess that would be the reason there. The Echo Dot Max, I talked about it on my live stream a couple weeks ago with Jimmy Hawkins, who covers more Amazon stuff. It is a really interesting speaker, and then. Smart Home Solver had a really good video on it about some of the things that are not so great about kind of the design. He didn't like a lot of the button placement and stuff. I love what they're doing with home audio, how you can have the Echo Dot Max work in even a surround sound setup with your Fire TV. I think that's a really cool idea. I'd love to see Apple copy. But you're right, Sean, that maybe that would lead to comparisons. That would not be so good for Apple or not something Apple wanted in the media. So that's another reasonable thing. Although I also don't know if that in and of itself would be reason enough to delay the launch of a product. There's so much going into the launch of a product, right? Especially when you're phasing out the old one and bringing in the new one. Like, I don't know, but it's hard to say. All right. Hey, Eric. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining. We talked about the biggest news, I think, this week by far, as I talked about at the front of the stream, is something that I've been really excited about for a while. Was something that I saw in the Apple newsroom this week while I was looking for the HomePod Mini to be refreshed. We're getting SpongeBob Patty Pursuit 2 in Apple Arcade. Very exciting. But SpongeBob's great, whatever. I'm just not very familiar with any of that, but it was just kind of whatever. Probably exciting to some of you guys out there. IKEA has new smart home tech. We talked about that. And then a lot of different details about the FP300. Should you do Matter multi-admin into an Aqara hub? Aqara Aqara's really, IFA really showed me, my briefing with Aqara at IFA really showed me, and I think you could see this in probably a lot of creators covering Aqara from the IFA show. And this is very much true of their CES stuff as well. Aqara is really set on their hubs becoming a place where you run automation. And I mean, in full disclosure, this video that I did, as I mentioned in the video, I partnered with Aqara, which means, it is a sponsored video about the FP300. They did not tell me to run my automations on their hub. They did not tell me to say anything about that in the video. They're very hands-off for the most, when they work with creators, but they're a great company to work with. But that said, all of that stuff in the video was me kind of thinking about this makes sense for my smart home, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to try it, and oh, look, it worked out well, and that's why I'm going to share it with you. So you might look at that video and see that it's a partnership and think, oh, well, Aqara just told Eric to do this stuff, and that's why he's doing it. And it's no, that's not what happened there. I'm sure they liked seeing it, but there's nothing completely my own decision. But with that, I think the Matter running Matter automations inside of your Aqara hubs, particularly something like the M3 or some of the other hubs that Aqara announced at IFA and has not started shipping, like the M200, I think would be another potential option here. Those hubs, there's a lot of power and a lot of options there, and I think it's really going to be something to consider as you're looking at Home Assistant or Homey, and maybe using some kind of a smart home system beyond Apple Home or whatever other kind of major tech smart home platform of choice you have, right? Maybe you're Google Home, maybe you're an Amazon, user. But with that, if you want to sort of take automation to the next level, do some more complex automation, then running that in something, Aqara is one to consider there. I don't know if I haven't really pushed the limits on their platform to see how much they have something like Homey's Flow. They've marketed some things like that at IFA for more oriented towards small business and commercial customers, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of that, it's called Aqara Studio. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of that sort of come down to more of their product line over time. So this is Aqara Studio, what I'm getting at there. But yeah, so I mean, what I'm getting at, you might think of Aqara as sensors and cameras, which they are, very much a company that makes those things. But I think they're also really trying to get into running more automations and becoming more of a smart home platform in your home, which makes sense because then there's a reason for you to buy their products and not just anyone's products. Although, they're also trying to talk to anybody's smart home products as well, because they, it's part of how it works. But so smart apartments, smart hotels, these kinds of scenarios is a whole new market I think Aqara is trying to get into. So here's an interesting video. But example of the fall detection. So this is, I think, the FP2 or maybe some other similar sensor Aqara has. The FP2 has fall detection, which is a very nice feature, and they had a demo of that at CES. Could be a nice sort of, more in the home space where we're talking about aging in place. Why would you want to go with a FP2 over an FP300? Of course, the FP2 requires power connection, but it's going to have more of those recognition things around sleeping, fall detection, zones, right? So you can split up your room into multiple zones. So you guys understand what I'm talking about who might not be up on all the latest Aqara stuff. This is the FP2, the original millimeter wave sensor. As I mentioned earlier, FP2 and FP1E both took a number of software iterations before I really say Aqara nailed the reliability on them. There was someone in the chat earlier mentioned, kind of feeling that Supernova 8962 mentioned that same idea with the FP300. Maybe they need to keep fixing some bugs in the software, but I've been very pleased with the performance of the FP300 compared to the FP2 and FP1E, although I still, now I really like those sensors. I think they've come a long way since their initial launch. But yeah, that's the FP2. So something to consider if you're looking at FP2 versus FP300. The FP2 is going to give you some more powerful detection options. If something like fall detection is important for you or someone you're living with. Oh yeah. I mean, I wouldn't consider them to be, it's interesting, Eric, that you mentioned that. Yeah. I mean, this is the, I think what used to be the HomeKit Insider podcast with Andrew O'Hara. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't count Apple out for releasing the HomePod Mini still, let's say this upcoming week. We'll take it a day at a time, but I'd certainly love to see it, right? But that could also be a number of other reasons. They could be trying to coincide their podcast with another product launch, or an interview that needs to be timed right, or a guest that needs to be timed right to talk about some new product. So yeah, but that's could be another sign about the HomePod Mini. Oh, cool. And Eric is going to make a video on using the FP300 in Home Assistant. I know we had Semirk, I think is how you say your name. I'm sorry, but Semirk asked earlier about if I'd been using the FP300 in Home Assistant, and no, I have not. So can't speak to that, I guess you could say. I am testing these. I have thoughts, but not fully formed thoughts yet. So I'm going to hold my tongue on the new Philips Hue bulbs. Edgar Home Tech, Edgar in the chat earlier, was saying hi and back from vacation. He has a cool video on Apple, how you can tie Philips Hue color scenes to Apple Home scenes. There's been a lot changing at Philips Hue lately, and it's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on, figuring out how it fits into my content, if at all. So yeah, stay tuned to the channel. I think it's something that I'll talk about because, yeah, it's kind of a big change. I also find it interesting too with Philips Hue. Their new bridge seems to be hard to get a hold of, and they're also not selling it very widely. I don't know if that's supply constraints or what. Like, you go into a lot of local stores, or at least here where I live, you go to stores that usually sell Philips Hue stuff, and it's all still their old bridge. It seems like their new bridge is really kind of meant to be like the pro level, not the one to replace their current bridge, which, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with their current bridge, the previous generation Philips Hue bridge. But that's another side of it too. I am interested to see, like, I keep thinking that with Philips Hue cutting costs on their bulbs, that somehow reliability is going to take a hit. And so that's like something I'm keeping an eye on, and I'm not sure at this point. Is it like still going to be a rock solid, reliable product with the lower cost? Oh, nice. I mentioned go check out Jimmy Hawkins' video. I have not had a chance to watch your comparing the FP300 as well as the LaFair millimeter wave sensor, Jimmy, but cool. It supports Zigbee MQTT. Nice. That would be very nice. I'm sure there's a lot of cool things you could do with that in Home Assistant. So, anyone have any recommendations of smart Edison lights Oh, yes. And always on light switch. I have Lutron switches, but I don't like the hard cutoff. Yeah. So I think what you mean by that is the hard cutoff is in the bulb goes offline, not necessarily the dimming curve of the light fading off. Chris, but it's a good question. I'd love to hear in the chat if people have suggestions on smart Edison bulbs. It's not something I've played with a lot. I have non-smart Edison bulbs on my my Lutron dimmer switch in my dining room. But I know, speaking of Philips Hue, I'm pretty sure they do make Edison bulbs for that. Speaking of something tying back in really quick before we get to that, from my past video with the FP300 is I mentioned Aqara's Mars Tech. And I've talked about this a little bit on a previous live stream as well. But the Aqara light bulbs are compatible with Aqara's Mars Tech. So you can put an Aqara switch in the wall and then have these Aqara light bulbs. Now, they are not Edison style, but it's the T2 bulbs or the T1M. I think most of their lights will work with Mars. I know the T2 is compatible and the T1M because I use the T1M. But Mars is really cool because then, yes, here's Mars. Let me pull up, show you what I'm looking at. The Mars Tech, which gives you some flexibility in controlling the light bulbs with a switch on the wall, in that they do some things where something in the electrical current can sort of be transmitted to the light bulb to change its state. But then, generally speaking, it also is keeping the power on to the light to like help it operate. Now, one other key detail that I neglected to cover in the video about the FP300, although I really wasn't focusing a ton on Mars, you do need a neutral wire for Mars to work. It's a little bit off the top of the head, but I'm pretty confident you need a neutral wire for Mars to work. So keep that in mind as well. If you don't have neutral wires in your home, that could be a problem. But Mars is a really cool idea, kind of along the lines of things like that Innovelli has been doing, but kind of in a more integrated way between lights and switches to check out. So, yeah. Okay, cool. So you're talking about the offline, not that. Okay, great. Let's see if we can pull up some of the Philips Hue bulbs, but those are going to be expensive. Oh, there was a random company 2 years ago at CES that I saw that had really cool looking Edison bulbs. I have to look them up and see like what was their name, because let's see if I can just go into my video archives here and see maybe I can quickly find this company name. They looked really cool. I haven't tested them though. Let's see. Was it Wednesday of that day? I'm not going to be able to find this. I do keep a lot of my old CES video clips just as reference, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find this fast enough. Yeah. Never mind. This to me does not look like a very cool Edison bulb, but I don't know. I don't know what to tell you there, because this is not really doing it for me, but it is something out there. Oh wait, what's that one? Did they have that one? Looks cool, but I don't see it on the product page. Oh, of course. Not looking at all the products. Okay, these look more like what you're probably looking for. They have candelabra and this. Now let's see. How much do these actually cost? $50. Okay, for Philips Hue, that's not terrible. And that's the white and ambiance. You could probably save some money with just the white. Gives you less control over the color. Okay, and it's a 2-pack. It's not terrible. Yeah. I don't know. These would be ones I would consider if I was in the market for smart Edison bulbs. And it's nice they have the E12 version too for like a candelabra kind of chandelier style light too. Anyway, so there's some Edison bulbs. All right. Good question, Chris. Great to see you here. Thanks for tuning in. And Eric's chiming in about the Inovelli light switches. Yeah, I mean, that's a good, I guess he might mean the changing colors. I always think Edison as like the filament style, right? So that you can see a little filament, which these days just basically means like a small LED light strip that's inside the light bulb to look like a filament. But yeah, maybe means something else. Which in that case, if you just want brightness and color changes, I've been really impressed with the Aqara T2 light bulbs. In fact, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about Aqara lighting in a future video, or at least one future video. But yeah, something to consider just for basic light bulbs that change color and change white values, right? So different shades of the white spectrum. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. It's been a super fun live stream. Great to hang out with you. Stay tuned for got another newsletter coming around the corner on Sunday. Got more videos coming at you next week. And already have one of those completely edited, ready to go, but just trying to space out the content for you. And that'll be coming first to members. So if you're not a channel member, you can always sign up to get early access to a lot of the videos, as well as exclusive member videos. One of which I'm actually working on, like trying to find time to film. And I should have some more exciting member announcements soon. I hope, if everything works. So thanks so much and have a great week and weekend. Bye.